Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dailey Blend Show with me, Reed Dailey. Today is actually Saturday, the 21st of January. I was traveling this week and wasn't able to get back in time to record the show. But those are the breaks of recording on the internet. So if you're new around here, each week on the Friday Top 5 segment, we feature 5 things that we thought were interesting, notable, or culturally significant. This week, we are showcasing stories from the latest of LVMH's Watch Week, how to shoot better iPhone pictures thanks to Greg Williams. Pete Tong launches a DJ Academy. Sticking with that DJ theme, we talk about how mixed in key can actually help you prepare and execute your DJ sets more flawlessly. And then we're going to do a local feature on The Whistler. And of course, I discuss this week in sneakers. Before we jump into the episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the show on Twitter, Instagram. You can listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and now YouTube. And on YouTube, it's at Dailey Blend. With all that said, let's jump into the episode. I've been a fan of watches ever since I can remember. Years back when I was a little kid, I think I was in like 4th or 5th grade, my parents gave me a Fossil chronograph. And I absolutely adored looking at this watch, wearing this watch. And unfortunately, I played in it, I ran in it, and I think it just like sort of fell apart. You know, I didn't do anything like mischievous or you know, to break it, but it just like broke. And I think at the time they were like $100 or $200, and I did not get a replacement one, and I was very sad about that. I think that imprinted on me if I'm looking back at it. But over the years, I've been able to, purchase my own watches. I've gotten gifts as watches, and I'll never forget the first time I saw a Panerai with a display back, and I think at the time I kept on calling it an expose back, and no one knew what I was talking about. But since I saw my first Panerai 112 display back, and they were one of the first doing that sort of display back, I've been absolutely hooked with the high-end world of horology. Looking back at the last 10 or 15 years, the watch world is dramatically changed. And so what used to happen is there was 1 or 2 large shows, and I believe it was called Watch Week or Watch and Wonders. I don't remember the exact, Basel World. And then there was a second conference like 2 weeks later, but either at the same venue or a similar venue. Oh, no. Now I'm remembering. So there was SIHH, which was the Salon International de Horology, and I'm totally not getting that 100% right. And then like 2 weeks later, there was Basel World, which was much more of a large trade show, whereas the SIHH was these like small, beautiful boutiques. You had different watch groups kind of showing, their products at both shows, whereas, the latter with the big trade shows was Patek Philippe, Rolex, Tag, which is part of the Rolex brand, I believe Breitling. I mean, just like these massive, showings of watches. Well, the increased cost from that show for the folks that are trying to, the brands that were buying these large booths that they had to build out, just kept on going up and up. And I think watch brands sort of said, what value are you bringing for this increased cost? And then you add the fact that we had the global pandemic, and you put the third sort of piece of the puzzle of the fact that brands are using social media, and the world is using social media to show these brands and their exquisite new timepieces. So over the last couple years, it seems like the big shows or watch shows are sort of a thing of the past. Not to say that they won't do them, but they're not going to be these massive, big markets. I kind of compare it to like what I've seen down in Atlanta at the America's Mark with these gigantic showrooms. And they've also seen some consolidations with watch brands. So you've got the Richemont Group, you've got LVMH, and there's a few others. And what I've really enjoyed with LVMH, and while they do have many watch brands, such as Hublot, Tag Heuer, Zenith, Bulgari, and a few others, for me, as sort of a core consumer of watches that are meant to be timepieces, meant to be instruments for, calculating sort of activities, and then, sort of more like rugged, if you will. There's really three lines in the LVMH watch group that I really like. So Tag at the sort of bottom or entry level, Zenith in the middle, and then Hublot or Hublot, if you're an American, at the top. And Tag doesn't really do it for me, although I do love the Carrera line. That's always been a big fan of mine. And if someone wanted to help me find a Monaco for a reasonable price, like a Bamford edition, I'd be obviously thrilled for that watch. And then Hublot, while I do love the Big Bang, I don't necessarily love the negative connotation with the, stigma around the brand of who is the core consumer. But Zenith is something that is more interesting to me. So the brand has had a bit of a rebirth of the last 4 or 5 years. And I think a lot of that has to do with the CEO, Julien Tournard, and I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but his background was with Raymond Wells in Geneva as a sales manager, spending 17 years at Vacheron Constantin in various roles, from president of North America to international sales director to Asian Pacific managing director, and then becoming the president and CEO of LVMH as Zenith brand. And just from watching on the YouTube videos, it appears that he's definitely been schooled or mentored, if you will, by Jean-Claude Biver, who started Hublot and then sold it to LVMH. Anyway, Zenith has some really interesting movements and history. I think most notably, they've got the El Premier movement, which is one of the more powerful movements. Their movement in the past had powered the Daytona. And over the last couple of years, they've come out with really, I will say, 3 watches or 3 watch lines that really appeal to me as a consumer. The first is their Defy line, which, arguably is the closest thing to sister brand Hublot, and it's this gigantic, kind of like big, not gaudy, but it's a bigger watch for a bigger wrist, and it looks like a perfect weekend or summer watch. And I like it. I don't know if I necessarily spend the money on it, but I appreciate that they've gone and done a little more emphasis on these sporty watches, but the movement is still the king of the show. The next is they've gotten into their chronograph, and they basically, it looks, in my opinion, very similar to Rolex Daytona. They've, instead of the same sort of singular color on the subdials, they've got 3 different colors, and it's powered by the El Primero movement. It looks fantastic. Price point is roughly $10,000 when I last looked. And then they've gotten the Defy Skyline, which is by far my favorite watch, which is very similar to the Gerald Jantar Royal Oak. The key difference is in they've got a subhand for a 10-second movement, so the subhand moves in every 10 seconds. They've got this fantastic perforated looking face, and it's really a bunch of stars, which is the Zenith logo. And then they've got this deployable bracelet, which you don't see on a ton of brands. I've seen it mostly with Cartier and it switches out from a rubber to a metal bracelet or integrated bracelet. I was meant to just give you a little bit of background on the watches. Back to kind of the story at hand. So as I said, LVMH was hosting their Watch Week this week in Singapore. They've been doing a rotation of where they host their Watch Week. And it was great to see them land in Singapore, mostly because Wei Ko of The Rake and Revolution. The Rake is a men's magazine that we've talked about on this show a number of times, and then Revolution is a watch magazine and website, was there. He's a Singapore resident, and he was there very much to host and sort of curate some fantastic videos, one of which was with the CEO. And so we got a first glimpse into a few of the newer watches. The two that I want to highlight are the Skeleton. So it's the Defy Skyline Skeleton. So this is a fantastic looking watch. They've actually moved the secondhand register from the left-hand side, so at the 9 o'clock sort of alignment, down to the 6 o'clock. And I actually feel like on the Skeleton, it feels like this is the obvious only place that could go, whereas on the original sort of Defy Skyline, where you saw that on the sort of placement on the 9 o'clock area of the watch, or aligned with 9 o'clock, it just looked better. I don't think it would look as good on the 6, although I kind of want to see it now down at the 6. But anyway, the Skeleton watch looks great. You can see the modified El Primero movement. As I mentioned, it's got a deployable clasp. So they've got it in two different colorways. They've got it in the steel with the blue, and obviously you can get the blue rubber band. And then they've got the steel with the black. So the inner skeleton workings is more of a black color than the blue. And then you would get the corresponding black band. And then they've done something really interesting. They've taken the Defy Skyline that I loved, and they've made it to 36 millimeter. So you could argue it fits some men's watches. Obviously, many watches for 50 years were 36 millimeters, and obviously females are taking liking to a little bigger of a stance of a watch. So you could assume that this watch was made for both men and women, but likely targeting women. So go check out Zenith watches. I believe it's Zenith-watches, but we've got it linked in the show notes on daileyblend.com. And, look through some of these watches. The price points are, they're not entry level of $1,000 or $2,000. They're a little more than that, but they're not in the 20s or 30s. And they put out a fantastic product. I've gone to the local boutiques here in Highland Park, and I've gotten the chance to try them on, and they just feel great. Obviously, I haven't tried on the latest ones that have come out, but the El Primero movement looks fantastic. It's beautiful. The Skyline line is just fantastic on the wrist, and I highly recommend it for anyone looking for their next timepiece. Moving from watches, we're going to go into consumer electronics with Greg Williams. So a little bit about Greg Williams. He's one of the most trusted photographers in entertainment. Greg has always loved shooting on his phone, but missed the sort of ergonomic grip and shutter of a camera. Hence the design of the G Grip, which is the story and the feature for this second piece of the Friday Top 5. The idea here is that the G Grip comes with a 3 millimeter single-use adhesive back plates, which will adhere to smooth, non-textured, non-porous flat surfaces, aka put them on your iPhone and not a case is what they're saying. Or if you're going to do it, a hard plastic or leather, but you're not switching these things in and out. And so essentially you've got this little adhesive piece that you put on the backside of your iPhone, and you can hold it either horizontally or vertically, whatever your opinion or not opinion, but your preferred method. And there is sort of an action with your hand or your finger that would be very similar to that of, taking a picture with a traditional mirrorless or film camera. And I think it's really just helpful from a shooter standpoint, visually, of just how they're doing it. I think it's easier to do than trying to take a finger picture. But obviously, it's not, people are taking pictures with their cameras every day. I think this is just a little easier if you want to be a little more deliberate with shooting and using this as your primary camera. What's interesting to me is I did a little bit of research on both Greg and this camera system last weekend. And in the time that I'm recording this show, so roughly 7 days later, I've probably been pushed, I'd say, 6 different ads for different permutations of this sort of same setup where there's some button action and connection that would integrate with the camera. Now, with Greg's, it's not cheap. I think it's retailing for $40 or $60. The other solution that I saw, and then I don't remember the name of, uses the MagSafe system, so the magnets on the back of the iPhone, and allows you to actually connect a kind of components, and there's more than one. You've got, I saw one where it was the same sort of grip method with a camera button that would integrate with your Bluetooth, and then there was one that that same piece had like a stand component and then a light, so you could have all 3 components and they're all magnetic. So there's definitely an ecosystem of accessories that would work with the iPhone, and now that I'm seeing this one and getting pushed others, I'm gonna try 1 or 2 of them. I'm probably going to do that over the next couple weeks, only because I've got some travel coming up and I want to be able to shoot pictures while I'm on the road. So, I'll give you guys some updates on future shows of how I like these different products, and I'll maybe try to do like a loop back on either the weekly rundown, or maybe I'll do a special edition where we're doing like just tech review or product reviews, since I seem to talk about them and I end up actually going out and getting these products and using them, but I don't maybe necessarily circle back and say, hey, here was my user experience. So I'm writing that down as sort of a takeaway from this week's episode, and we'll be sure to start commenting and sort of giving almost like light product reviews. So moving from consumer electronics, we're jumping into Pete Tong and his DJ Academy. So a little bit about Pete Tong. He has been the go-to guy in dance music thanks to his BBC Radio 1 show, or shows I should say. He also has IMS Ibiza, which is basically a show where they come together and talk about the state of DJing. He's done it in other markets, I believe, over the years, but the biggest one seems to always be in Ibiza, where he's bringing top DJ talent, and it's kind of like a state of the industry. Well, it looks like, Pete hasn't let COVID slow him down, and his desire to sort of push the world of DJing forward. And I really respect this as someone who's, loved DJing for the last 20 years of my life. And I do think there's always ways for like people to get inspired and learn new tips and tricks on legacy technology, as well as the new tech and the new associated hardware. In terms of the teachers, if you will, you've got obviously Pete Tong, you've got Carl Cox, Jamie Jones, Nicole Molbeder, and I always pronounce her name wrong, and a few others. And in terms of the courses, I actually really like how he's done it. He's got sort of a beginner selection and then an advanced selection, and that obviously is pretty straightforward. But the course material talks about just general bios and backgrounds of each one of their DJs. That's going to be a professor. Then it talks about the perfect setup, so it's, DJ booth, deck focus, mixer focus, crossfaders, headphones, so it's just a good primer. Then it's learning to mix, which is really understanding, the different phases of BPMs, learning how to beat count. I guess no one wanted to say just use sync. Tracking, track structure and how to read it, phase alignment, mixing with volumes, mixing with EQ, and then it goes into advanced mixing, which is things that are more important, like hot cues, how to mix in key, building a flow. And then it goes on to, the different teachers' DJ setups. and kind of the network DJ etiquette in the industry. And then there is a final exam. Didn't really see that one coming. But hey, I think it's pretty cool that Pete's actually gone out and set this up. The full course is $347. The advanced only is $297. You get access to the talent pool. You get 3 months of Beatport streaming, which is actually pretty cool. You get to see the teacher's record box, which obviously this is a defined time period, but it's kind of cool to see what these artists are playing with. You'll get some promo tools and a diploma, which I don't know if you really care about. And then I've seen more recently that Pete's been able to feature some of these artists or students on Apple Music. And so Apple Music's doing some DJ sets. My guess is that there's like defined track lists that you can play, but I could be wrong there, only because they have to do the streaming kind of approvals. But there are a few companies that are out there that are doing this sort of online courses. My guess is this idea came while he was in COVID. Just from a timing perspective, it seems like something that would have taken a couple years to develop and get everyone to be in a single place and to build the technology and framework. So hats off to Pete and team for putting this together. I'm thrilled to see this, and if I can find a little bit of time, I might take a class too. I always like learning things. I don't care how good you are. You can always pick up a few tips and tricks. And so I'm a big fan of e-learning, and the fact that I can marry that with my own interest in the DJ world is just an added plus. So go check it out. We've obviously linked to the materials for the DJ Academy on daileyblend.com, and let me know what you think of the course. So if you've been following the show over the last, I would say 6 weeks, you'll know or notice that walking into the holiday season, I sort of ramp up my interest in creative endeavors. And I've talked about this, I think, both on the Friday Top 5, but definitely on the weekly rundown. I always find that during the Christmas or holiday break, rather said, I have a little bit of free time, and I like to do things like digital art creation, physical art creation, music production, DJ sets, and finding different ways to sort of do that, different tools, different techniques. And that's a combination of individual experimentation as well as looking what others are doing. And, I think 20 years ago, I'd go down to record stores and, art stores and sort of ask questions. And now, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to think about it, a lot of that is just Google searching and watching YouTube videos and seeing what others are doing. And, I'll be the first to admit that it's, I've known about mixing in key for a number of years, and I've known that it makes it easier, it makes it harmonically better sounding, but I haven't bothered to really pay attention to it or learn it. And so I finally was like, all right, this is dumb. I know this is actually going to make my mixes sound better and, make just my life easier. And the software, for the most part, actually gives you the mix in key, although there is mix in key software on top of what I'm using, which is mostly Tractor these days. And I found this funny guy on the internet named Nick Spinelli, who I believe is like a wedding kind of corporate DJ and does a great job of that. I've seen some of his YouTube stuff, but he's also just like a DJ reviewer. I'd put him in the same bucket I put like Cleveland Terry, and I don't think that's like I think that's probably a very accurate description. And he did this great video on how to mix in key, and the best thing was I think he's a Jersey guy, but he's got this funny picture of himself just in the middle of the mix in key with a really angry face, although he seems just like a passionate New Jersey guy, not an angry New Jersey guy. But Nick, I watched your video a couple times, and it was like really straightforward in terms of the wheel. And his kind of concept is he typically will not jump back too many steps, but typically just progresses forward in the wheel, and the idea is that as you move forward from like 1A to 2A to 3A, it just harmonically sounds better, and there's like a natural progression from an auditorial and then an emotional feeling from the consumer or the people on the dance floor, if you will. Anyway, I linked Nick's video on the proper way to mix and key, and it's funny to me. I've probably put out 200 mixes. I never really bothered to mix and key or learn that, and I always could tell like that my mixes were better when they were all in the same key range, and I'd paid attention to it but not like been deliberate. And after watching this video, I think I watched it twice, I went and did some prep and really put together vignettes of songs that were both like sonically, that felt the same, obviously that were in the same sort of key range. So I think I did all like 12, 10, 11, and 12 A songs, so they kind of all sounded sonically together, and then I did a second mix that was like 1A, 2A, and 3A, so those sort of all sounded sonically accurate or complementary. And the mixes just came out so much better, and I was just like, why haven't I been doing this? So I'm going to look at this video as my rebirth into mixing within key, and I'm going to go look at the difference between just Pioneer Record Box and their key mapping, and then Native Instruments, and then is it value add to go buy the mixed in key software and use that from a tagging standpoint. One of my friends is using it and loves it. I've just got to see if the price to buy it is really worth it, and if it works with my workflow, which is jumping from Serato, Record Box, and Tractor from time to time. I'd love it too if it could imprint on the songs that I bring into Ableton. Not sure if it can do that, but gotta go figure that out. So Nick, hats off to you and your videos. They are really good. I'm always impressed with them, and once again, go check it out. I think he does a nice job. So everyone writes down goals for the new year, and mine are a little different than in years past. One of the things that I wanted to do was be more deliberate about exploring Chicago and Milwaukee, because I sit in between both cities. Chicago is probably more aligned to just home, just because it's easier for me to get on trains. I've got more friends and kind of more reasons to be down in Chicago, but it's really just if I was going to distill it, it's to be more connected and understand my local community. The second is to be more deliberate about planning and executing trips. But today we're just talking about local, neighborhood, kind of community, understanding your city, knowing your city. And one of them is the Whistler Bar. So the Whistler Bar is a gallery, record label, and venue that hosts live music and DJs. Their award-winning cocktail program features an always-changing menu of classic, contemporary favorites and Whistler originals. Our stage hosts an eclectic mix of jazz, DJs, electronic music, film screening, reading, and other artist endeavors. Okay, so how did I get to this of all the other bars? So thanks to Negronis with Greg, and then DJ Feelgood Greg. So my two buddies are both Gregs. When I moved here 7 years ago and was slightly younger and still went out to bars and went into the city a bit more on the weekends, this was pre-kids for everyone. The Whistler was always a go-to spot. I think it was one of the first bars in Chicago that was part of the, cocktail craze, and moving into, these artisan cocktails and having these really cool menus. It didn't hurt the fact that, DJ Greg Feelgood, who's been featured on the Dailey Blend podcast, which is our other show, which is a monthly music series where we feature DJs from a variety of different genres, and then also myself. It's where I kind of post most of my DJ sets. But anyway, Greg was always DJing there, and so we'd go see him play. He still does, I think, a monthly residence there. And, Whistler has their own Instagram called the Whistler Menu. And it's their ever-evolving cocktail menu, and they do photos of the menu on there and show some of the current list of classics, contemporary favorites, and Whistler originals. I don't know why I said that so weird. On DaileyBlend.com, I've linked to the Whistler Menu cocktail Instagram. I've obviously linked to the Whistler itself, and then featured some of the mixes from Greg that he's done for Dailey Blend over the years. One of the things I will also highlight is that if you do follow me, you know that I'm a big fan of sneakers, and we're about to talk about sneakers. But I set up a new Instagram page called Coffee, Kicks, and Cocktails. And it's really what it sounds like. I'm putting a lot of coffee, kicks, and cocktail features on there. And the latest post is actually of the Whistler Menu cocktail and one of their drinks that I'm going to be trying this weekend as sort of my Saturday drink of choice. And I'll let you know how it tastes on next week's episode. So this is the Friday Top 5, and we've already hit our 5-story threshold, if you will, but I've been rounding out most of the shows lately talking about sneaker news, and I was pretty happy. We're into 2023, and Jordan and Nike, if you will, is still pushing the Jordan 1 craze, and they're doing all sorts of different colors, but this time they're doing the Air Jordan 1 High OG True Blue. And I took a big W on these, and I was really surprised. I thought these would be a big hit for people. I wear a ton of blue. I wear a ton of gray. It goes with everything that I have in my wardrobe. Not everything, but most things. And there was no line. I think they're still available on Sneakers and Finish Line. They look great. I've already gotten them at home, and the leather's fantastic, but they're the sort of the OG blocking, which is much more of a lot of white on the toe box, not the front part of the toe, and then the heel cover. So they've got this almost like gray suede on the back and then blue in the front. For me, these match the True Blue True Blue Jordan 3s that I love and wear all the time. They're probably, I would say, my favorite sneaker of all time, maybe up there. But excited to wear these. I was in Boston for work all this week, and I kept on having events, and everyone's dressed up, and I'm dressed up too, but I'm wearing Jordans, and people are like, wow, you're wearing Jordans? I'm like, yeah, but I match my my custom blazer and kind of outfit, so that's kind of my new thing. It's like, look, I want to be in comfortable shoes. I'm walking around a lot. I like the ankle support, if I'm being honest, and they look great, and I'm excited to have another pair. So be on the lookout on the Coffee, Kicks, and Cocktails Instagram for more content on my True Blues and other sneaker content. And let me know what you think of that name. I was kind of going back and forth between Coffee, Kicks, and Cocktails, and just doing Dailey Blend Kicks or Daily Kicks, or even, because I'm Consultants and Kicks. So there was a heavy bit of deliberation. Still could change, but I'm kind of liking the name. So let me know in the comments what you think of that Instagram name, and we'll decide if we keep it or make some changes. All right, that wraps it up for a little longer of a Friday Top 5. Once again, sorry for being delayed in releasing the show. I know most people really like it coming out on Fridays pretty consistently, and I've been pretty good about that. So be on the lookout for the weekly rundown that comes out on Tuesdays. The Friday Top 5, as it sounds, comes out on Fridays, and we're doing a bit of planning. I've got a couple guests coming up on the Dailey Blend Show Sound Off segment, so you'll be seeing a few more sort of interviews in the coming weeks. I don't want to disclose too much because sometimes the scheduling of these things does shift, but looking forward to putting out some really great content of some interesting owner operators, founders that are doing some fun things in retail, in consumer goods, and that I think that a lot of the folks that listen to this show will appreciate and kind of want to go and explore the brand and get some new gear and learn about some people doing some cool stuff. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the show on Twitter and Instagram. You can download the show, stream it on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. And with that said, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Catch you next week.